You step into the restaurant wearing your old dress blues, the same uniform you wore decades ago when it still fit like a second skin. The fabric is a little loose now, and the ribbons have faded with time, but every crease and fold is sharp and clean. You still carry the pride of military standards, even if the world outside doesn't notice. A young waitress spots you and can't hold back a laugh. "Playing dress up today?" she says loud enough for others nearby to hear. "Halloween isn't for another 6 months." Her words hang in the air, a cruel joke born from ignorance and youth. She has no idea who you are or the battles behind those ribbons. What she doesn't understand is that each medal on your chest represents a story of courage, sacrifice, and leadership, stories that have shaped the training of America's most elite warriors. These ribbons aren't costumes. They are a testament to a legacy few can claim. Then, just as the laughter dies down, a Navy SEAL quietly rises from a nearby table. Removing his cap with respect, he walks over to you. His gesture says it all. Real respect is earned, and today, it's being given where it's long overdue. Welcome to Echoes of Honor, where we explore how respect can transform mockery into reverence in a single moment. Before we continue this powerful story, tell us in the comments from which city in the world are you watching this video today. And if you think stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support the channel. We're growing every day, and I sincerely thank you for being a part of it. Murphy's Diner had been serving the same comfort food for 30 years, attracting a mix of local workers, traveling families, and elderly regulars who appreciated consistent quality and reasonable prices. The decor hadn't changed much since the 1990s. Red vinyl booths, checkered linoleum floors, and walls covered with local high school sports photos and vintage advertisements. Master Chief Petty Officer William Dutch Vandenberg had chosen Murphy specifically because it reminded him of the diners he'd visited during his Navy career, places where military personnel could get a good meal without pretense or judgment. At 74, Dutch still maintained the bearing of a career military man, though his body showed the accumulated wear of 3 decades in special operations. Today was different from his usual casual visits. Dutch wore his dress blue uniform, the ribbons and decorations arranged with precision that spoke to decades of military protocol. The uniform was from his retirement ceremony 15 years earlier, still maintained in perfect condition despite being slightly loose on his aged frame. The occasion that prompted Dutch to wear his uniform was deeply personal. Today marked the anniversary of a mission that had cost him 3 of his best men, and wearing the uniform was his way of honoring their memory. It was a private ritual he observed annually, visiting places they had enjoyed together, maintaining the traditions they had shared. Dutch's uniform told a story that few people could read. The ribbons represented deployments to conflicts most Americans had forgotten, commendations for actions that remained classified, and recognition for leadership under circumstances that tested the limits of human endurance. His chest displayed the evolution of special operations over 30 years, from early Vietnam-era programs through the modern SEAL teams. Most civilians wouldn't recognize the significance of Dutch's decorations, but military personnel would immediately understand they were looking at someone whose service had been extraordinary. The Navy Cross ribbon, the Silver Star, multiple bronze stars with V devices, each represented specific acts of courage that had been documented and recognized by the highest levels of military command. Sarah Chun was 23 years old and 6 months into her job at Murphy's Diner. College-educated, but working in food service while pursuing her master's degree, she approached her job with casual indifference that reflected her view of restaurant work as temporary necessity rather than career choice. Sarah had grown up in a civilian family with no military connections, viewing armed services through the lens of movies and television rather than real experience. Her generation's relationship with the military was abstract, removed from the daily reality of military service that had defined previous generations. When Dutch entered the diner that Tuesday afternoon, Sarah's first reaction was confusion followed by barely concealed amusement. The elderly man's uniform struck her as either an elaborate costume or evidence of someone living in the past. The careful arrangement of ribbons, the polished shoes, the precise bearing, all seemed like theatrical performance rather than genuine military dress. Dutch requested a corner booth away from the main dining area, his preference for observation positions and clear sight lines to exits reflecting habits that never fully disappeared even in civilian settings. He moved with deliberate care, his age evident, but his military bearing unmistakable to anyone who knew what to look for. Sarah approached his table with the kind of forced cheerfulness she'd learned to project toward customers she found amusing. "Good afternoon," she said, her tone carrying an edge of condescension. "What can I get you started with today?" Dutch looked up from his menu with the courteous attention he showed to all service personnel, military or civilian. "Coffee, please. Black. And I'll need a few minutes to decide on food." Sarah nodded, but her eyes lingered on Dutch's uniform with obvious skepticism. "Nice costume," she commented with a smirk. "Playing dress-up today? Halloween isn't for another 6 months." The comment carried across the immediate area, drawing glances from nearby customers who looked to see what had prompted the waitress's amusement. Dutch's face showed no reaction to the insult, his expression maintaining the neutral politeness he'd perfected through decades of dealing with civilians who didn't understand military culture. "It's not a costume," Dutch replied quietly, his voice carrying no irritation despite the obvious disrespect. "I'm honoring the memory of friends who died in service." Sarah's expression suggested she found his explanation even more amusing. "Right?" she said with obvious skepticism. "I'll get your coffee." As Sarah walked away, Dutch felt the familiar weight of civilian indifference to military service. He'd experienced similar reactions countless times over the years, civilians who viewed military uniforms as either costume or outdated formality rather than recognition of service and sacrifice. At a table across the dining room, Petty Officer First Class Jake Martinez sat quietly with his lunch, wearing civilian clothes but maintaining the alertness that marked active-duty military personnel. Martinez was a Navy SEAL with 8 years of service, currently on leave between deployments. Martinez had noticed Dutch the moment he entered the diner, recognizing both the military bearing and the significance of the dress uniform. The older man's ribbons told a story that Martinez could read like a book. Decades of special operations service, multiple combat deployments, and decorations that represented extraordinary courage under fire. Martinez felt immediate respect for Dutch, understanding that the elderly man's uniform represented the foundation upon which modern SEAL operations were built. The tactics, traditions, and values that defined current special operations had been developed by men like Dutch, who had served when the programs were experimental and dangerous in ways that current personnel could barely imagine. Sarah's loud comment about costumes and dress-up carried clearly across the dining room, reaching Martinez's table with unmistakable disrespect. The young SEAL felt anger building as he watched the elderly veteran's dignified response to treatment that violated every principle of respect Martinez had been taught. In SEAL culture, respect flowed upward to those who had proven themselves in combat, regardless of current status or civilian perceptions. The idea of a veteran being mocked for wearing earned decorations struck Martinez as fundamentally wrong, a violation of honor that demanded response. Martinez studied Dutch more carefully, noting the specific ribbons and their arrangement. His training had included military history and the evolution of special operations, making him capable of recognizing the significance of what he was seeing. Dutch's decorations represented participation in programs that had created the foundation for everything Martinez did as a modern SEAL. The decision forming in Martinez's mind would transform an uncomfortable moment of civilian disrespect into something entirely different, a demonstration of how honor flows between generations of warriors who understand what service truly means. Martinez set down his fork and carefully observed the interaction continuing between Sarah and Dutch. The waitress had returned with coffee, but her demeanor remained dismissive, treating Dutch like an elderly man playing fantasy rather than a genuine veteran deserving respect. "So what's the special occasion?" Sarah asked with mock interest, refilling Dutch's coffee cup. "Military reunion or something?" Dutch's response was quiet and dignified. "It's a personal memorial. I lost some good men on this date many years ago." Sarah's expression showed she remained unconvinced by Dutch's explanation. "Uh-huh," she said with obvious skepticism. "Well, enjoy your coffee, Admiral." The incorrect rank assignment was clearly intentional mockery, designed to demonstrate her disbelief in Dutch's military credentials. Several nearby customers glanced over at the exchange, some looking uncomfortable with Sarah's obvious disrespect. Martinez felt his anger intensify as he watched Dutch's patient acceptance of treatment that no veteran should endure. The young SEAL's training emphasized respect for senior personnel, protection of fellow warriors, and intolerance for dishonor directed toward those who had served with distinction. Dutch maintained his composure, but Martinez could see the sadness in the older man's eyes. This was clearly a difficult day made worse by civilian indifference to military sacrifice. The elderly veteran had come to honor fallen comrades and found himself subjected to ridicule instead of recognition. Martinez made his decision with the decisiveness that marked special operations personnel. He stood from his table, his movement drawing attention from customers who had been watching the uncomfortable interaction. His bearing immediately changed from casual civilian to unmistakably military professional. Sarah noticed Martinez approaching but didn't initially understand the significance of his purposeful movement toward Dutch's table. She continued her casual disrespect, unaware that someone with the knowledge to challenge her behavior was about to intervene. Martinez walked directly to Dutch's table, his approach respectful but determined. As he drew closer, he could see more details of Dutch's ribbons and decorations, confirming his assessment of the veteran's extraordinary service record. "Excuse me, sir," Martinez said to Dutch, his voice carrying the formal respect reserved for senior military personnel. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Dutch looked up with surprise, recognizing the military bearing in Martinez's approach despite the younger man's civilian clothes. "Of course," Dutch replied, uncertainty evident in his voice. Martinez positioned himself so that his next actions would be visible to Sarah and the surrounding customers. What he was about to do would be immediately recognizable to anyone with military experience and impossible to misinterpret even by civilians. "Sir," Martinez said with unmistakable respect, "I'm Petty Officer Martinez, U.S. Navy SEALs. May I ask your name and unit?" Dutch's surprise deepened as he realized he was being addressed by an active-duty SEAL. Master Chief William Vandenberg, retired. SEAL Team 2, later SEAL Team 6. Martinez felt his breath catch as the significance of Dutch's response hit him. SEAL Team 6 represented the pinnacle of special operations, and Master Chief rank indicated senior enlisted leadership. This wasn't just any veteran. This was one of the men who had helped create modern SEAL tactics and training. Sarah paused in her duties, beginning to sense that something she didn't understand was developing between the two men. Martinez's respectful tone and formal bearing suggested this wasn't casual conversation. "Master Chief," Martinez continued, his voice growing stronger, "everything we do today is built on the foundation you and your generation created. Would you mind if I paid my respects?" Dutch nodded, still uncertain about what was happening, but recognizing the genuine respect in Martinez's demeanor. The younger SEAL's formality suggested something significant was about to occur. Martinez came to attention with the precision that marked elite military training. His movement was sharp, purposeful, immediately recognizable as military protocol even to civilians unfamiliar with specific traditions. Then, with deliberate ceremony that commanded attention from everyone in the immediate area, Martinez removed his baseball cap and held it at his side while executing a perfect military salute to Dutch. The gesture was unmistakably respectful, impossible to misinterpret as anything other than one warrior honoring another. Martinez held the salute with unwavering precision, his face showing the kind of respect typically reserved for the highest-ranking officers. Dutch's response was automatic, returning the salute with the muscle memory of 30 years in uniform. For a moment, the two men connected across generations of service, sharing the kind of recognition that existed between warriors who understood what combat leadership truly meant. Sarah stopped moving entirely, her casual dismissal of Dutch suddenly replaced by confusion as she witnessed genuine military respect being demonstrated in her dining room. The formality of Martinez's gesture suggested she had seriously misjudged the elderly man she'd been mocking. Other customers turned to watch the exchange, sensing that something significant was happening even if they didn't understand the military protocol being displayed. The respectful precision of Martinez's actions commanded attention from everyone nearby. Martinez lowered his salute but remained at attention as he spoke loud enough for surrounding tables to hear. "Master Chief, I need to apologize for what you've experienced here today. No veteran should be treated with anything less than complete respect, especially someone with your service record. Dutch's confusion was evident as he processed Martinez's words. The young SEAL's intervention was unexpected, but the respect being shown felt like balm on wounds Dutch hadn't realized were so deep. Sarah felt the weight of attention from customers and staff who had witnessed her treatment of Dutch contrasted with Martinez's obvious reverence. The difference between her dismissive mockery and the SEAL's formal respect created a stark comparison that left her looking foolish and insensitive. Martinez wasn't finished with his demonstration of proper respect for Dutch's service and sacrifice. Martinez turned his attention to Sarah, his expression serious but controlled. "Ma'am," he said in a voice that carried clearly across the dining area, "I think there's been a misunderstanding about your customer." Sarah felt increasingly uncomfortable as more people focused on the conversation. Martinez's obvious military bearing and formal respect for Dutch suggested she had made a significant error in judgment. "This gentleman," Martinez continued, gesturing respectfully toward Dutch, "is Master Chief Petty Officer William Vandenberg, United States Navy SEALs, retired. Those ribbons you were laughing at represent 30 years of service to this country, including combat operations that most people can't imagine." The information hit Sarah like a physical blow. She looked at Dutch with new eyes, seeing not an elderly man playing dress-up, but a genuine military veteran whose decorations represented real service and sacrifice. Martinez's voice grew stronger as he continued his explanation. "Master Chief Vandenberg served with SEAL Team 2 and SEAL Team 6 during some of the most dangerous operations in Special Forces history. The tactics my team uses today, the training that keeps us alive, the traditions that define who we are, they all came from men like him." Dutch remained quietly seated, overwhelmed by the unexpected recognition, but maintaining his dignity as Martinez continued to educate everyone within hearing about what his service had meant. "Those ribbons include the Navy Cross," Martinez explained, his respect evident in every word. "That's our nation's second highest decoration for valor in combat. It's awarded for extraordinary heroism in the face of great personal danger. Fewer than 7,000 have ever been awarded." Sarah felt shame spreading through her as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. She had mocked a genuine war hero, treating his earned decorations as costume jewelry and his military bearing as elderly fantasy. Martinez continued his education of the surrounding civilians. Master Chief Vandenberg's generation created the foundation for everything modern SEALs do. They developed the tactics, established the traditions, and proved the concepts that we still use today. When I go into combat, I'm using knowledge that men like him created through their service and sacrifice." The dining room had gone completely quiet. All conversations stopped as customers absorbed the significance of what Martinez was explaining. Dutch remained motionless, still processing the unexpected intervention by someone who understood what his service had meant. Martinez looked directly at Sarah as he delivered his most important point. "When you mock a veteran's uniform, you're not just insulting one man. You're showing disrespect for everyone who has served, everyone who is serving now, and everyone who died defending the freedoms you enjoy every day." The words carried weight that extended beyond Sarah to everyone present. Martinez had transformed an uncomfortable moment into an education about respect, sacrifice, and the debt civilians owed to those who had served in their defense. Sarah felt tears beginning to form as the full impact of her behavior became clear. She had treated a genuine American hero with casual disrespect, mocking his service and dismissing his sacrifice in front of other customers. "Master Chief," Martinez said, turning back to Dutch with obvious reverence, "would you allow me to buy your meal today? It would be an honor to share a table with someone whose service made my own possible." Dutch's emotional response was visible as he processed the respect being shown by someone who understood what his decorations truly represented. "That's not necessary," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion he'd been suppressing. "Sir," Martinez replied firmly, "when a SEAL has the opportunity to honor a Master Chief who helped create our community, it's not a courtesy. It's a privilege." Martinez then did something that would be remembered by everyone present for years afterward. He pulled out his own military identification card and placed it on the table in front of Dutch, then stepped back and saluted again with even greater formality than before. Master Chief Vandenberg, he announced in a voice that carried throughout the dining room. Petty Officer First Class Jake Martinez, SEAL Team 5, requesting permission to join you for the remainder of your meal. The formal request, delivered with military precision, transformed the interaction from civilian customer service into military protocol. Dutch's response came from 30 years of naval tradition as he gestured to the seat across from him. Permission granted, Petty Officer Martinez. Please, sit down. As Martinez took his seat across from Dutch, the dynamic in the restaurant completely changed. What had been an elderly man eating alone while enduring disrespect had become two warriors sharing a meal with obvious mutual regard. Sarah approached the table with visible nervousness, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. Sir, she said to Dutch, her voice shaking with emotion, I owe you a sincere apology. I had no idea about your service, and I treated you terribly. Dutch looked up at her with the grace that had carried him through 3 decades of military service. Apology accepted, he said simply, demonstrating the character that had earned him senior enlisted rank in the most elite military unit. Your meal is on the house, Sarah continued, her shame evident in every word. Both meals. And I want you to know that I learned something important today about respect and recognition. Martinez nodded approvingly at Sarah's response, recognizing genuine remorse and a willingness to learn from her mistake. The young SEAL understood that education was often more valuable than punishment when civilians made errors based on ignorance rather than malice. Dutch's transformation from ignored customer to honored guest was complete, but the impact of Martinez's intervention extended far beyond one man's dignity being restored. The conversation between Dutch and Martinez drew the attention of other customers throughout the remainder of their meal. What started as military courtesy evolved into something deeper as Dutch shared experiences from the early days of SEAL operations while Martinez provided updates on current training and missions. Dutch's stories weren't dramatic tales of heroism, but detailed accounts of how tactical procedures were developed, how training programs evolved, and how the SEAL community had grown from experimental programs into the elite force it represented today. Martinez listened with the intensity of a student learning from a master teacher, asking questions that demonstrated both respect and professional interest. Sarah returned to their table multiple times, not to hurry them along, but to ensure they had everything they needed. Her demeanor had completely transformed from dismissive mockery to genuine respect, and she listened intently whenever Dutch shared stories about his service years. Other customers found reasons to walk past their table, hoping to overhear pieces of the conversation between the veteran and active-duty SEAL. The restaurant's atmosphere had shifted from routine dining to something approaching reverence as people realized they were witnessing living military history being shared between generations. Word of the interaction spread among the restaurant staff, and even the manager emerged from the kitchen to thank Dutch for his service. The entire establishment seemed to understand that something significant was happening, not just a meal between two men, but a connection between past and present that embodied the continuity of military tradition. As their meal concluded, Martinez addressed something that had been weighing on his mind since he first saw Dutch's ribbons. Master Chief, he said respectfully, you mentioned this is a memorial day for fallen comrades. Would you mind sharing their story? Dutch's expression grew solemn as he considered the request. For years, he had observed this anniversary privately, carrying the weight of memory alone. But Martinez's genuine interest and obvious respect created an opportunity to honor his fallen teammates in a way he had never experienced. 3 good men, Dutch said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of decades of survivors' grief. Lost during a classified operation that I can't discuss in detail. But they died doing their job, protecting others, living up to the standards we all swore to maintain. Martinez nodded with understanding, recognizing that some aspects of military service would always remain private while appreciating Dutch's willingness to share what he could. Their sacrifice contributed to everything we do today, Martinez said with conviction. Their names may not be public, but their legacy lives on in every SEAL who follows. Dutch felt something shift inside him as he heard his fallen teammates honored by someone who understood what their deaths had meant. For too many years, he had carried their memory alone, But Martinez's recognition provided the kind of acknowledgement that military personnel needed but rarely received from civilian society. As they prepared to leave, Martinez made a request that would establish a connection extending far beyond this single encounter. "Master Chief, my team trains in this area regularly. Would you be willing to share some of your experiences with younger SEALs? The kind of knowledge you have can't be learned from textbooks." Dutch's surprise was evident. "I don't know how much help I could be. The equipment has changed, the tactics have evolved." "Sir," Martinez replied with obvious sincerity, "courage doesn't change. Leadership doesn't change. The principles that made you successful are the same ones we need today. Besides, understanding how we got here helps us figure out where we're going." The invitation resonated with Dutch in ways he hadn't expected. The idea of contributing to current SEAL training, of ensuring that lessons learned through his generation's sacrifice continued to benefit younger warriors, appealed to him profoundly. "I'd be honored to help," Dutch said, his voice stronger than it had been all day. "Those men I lost today, they'd want their experiences to benefit the next generation." Martinez and Dutch exchanged contact information, establishing a connection that would benefit both men and the broader SEAL community. Dutch would gain renewed purpose through mentoring younger warriors, while Martinez and his teammates would receive insights that could only come from someone who had helped create the foundation of their profession. Sarah approached their table one final time as they prepared to leave. "Mr. Vandenberg," she said formally, "I want to thank you for your service, and I want to apologize again for my behavior. I learned something important today about respect and recognition." Dutch accepted her apology with characteristic grace, but Martinez added something that would help Sarah understand the broader implications of the day's events. "Ma'am, what you witnessed today is how the military community takes care of its own. We recognize each other, we honor each other's service, and we ensure that sacrifice is remembered." Martinez paused, then continued with obvious conviction. "Master Chief Vandenberg earned his decorations through actions that most civilians will never understand. But you don't need to understand the details to show respect for someone who served with honor." As Dutch and Martinez left Murphy's Diner together, their departure marked by respectful nods from staff and customers, the impact of their interaction continued to resonate throughout the establishment. Sarah found herself researching military decorations on her phone, trying to understand the significance of the ribbons she had dismissed as costume jewelry. The manager decided to create a policy recognizing military personnel with priority seating and complimentary meals for veterans on significant military holidays. The day's events had demonstrated that his establishment could be more than just a place to eat. It could be a space where military service was honored and respected. Regular customers who had witnessed the interaction left with new understanding about the veterans in their community. Many realized they had probably encountered military personnel without recognizing their service, missing opportunities to show appreciation for sacrifice they had never considered. Dutch's annual memorial observance, once a solitary and painful ritual, had been transformed into something that honored his fallen teammates while connecting him to the continuing tradition they had helped establish. Martinez's intervention had given meaning to Dutch's grief while providing the young SEAL with insights that would inform his own service. The relationship that developed between Dutch and Martinez became a model for how military tradition passes between generations. Dutch began visiting SEAL training facilities regularly, sharing tactical knowledge and leadership principles with younger teams. His experiences informed current operations while his presence reminded active personnel of the sacrifices that had created their capabilities. Martinez and his teammates gained access to institutional knowledge that textbooks couldn't provide, insights about leadership under pressure, decision-making in crisis situations, and the mental resilience required for long-term special operations careers. Dutch's mentoring helped them understand not just what to do, but why certain approaches worked and how to adapt principles rather than simply follow procedures. The connection extended beyond professional development to personal support. Dutch found renewed purpose in contributing to current military effectiveness, while Martinez and other young SEALs gained a mentor whose experience helped them navigate the challenges of special operations careers. Sarah's transformation from dismissive waitress to respectful supporter of military personnel represented something larger about civilian education regarding veteran issues. Her initial mockery came from ignorance rather than malice. and Martinez's intervention provided education rather than simply punishment for her mistake. The incident at Murphy's Diner became a teaching story within the local SEAL community, demonstrating how respect for senior personnel should be maintained regardless of civilian understanding or appreciation. Martinez's intervention showed younger personnel how to honor their predecessors while educating civilians about military tradition and sacrifice. More broadly, the event illustrated how recognition flows between military generations when mutual respect creates opportunities for connection. Dutch's decorations told a story that Martinez could read and appreciate, while Martinez's willingness to show public respect gave Dutch the acknowledgement his service deserved. The transformation of mockery into reverence demonstrated how quickly situations could change when knowledge replaced ignorance, when respect replaced dismissal, when understanding replaced assumption. Sarah's laughter had been based on not knowing what Dutch's uniform represented, but Martinez's intervention provided the education that turned derision into appreciation. Sometimes the most important battles are fought not with weapons, but with respect, not in hostile territory, but in familiar places where civilians and military personnel interact daily. Sometimes victory comes not from defeating enemies, but from building bridges between communities that should naturally support each other. Dutch's annual memorial had been intended as private remembrance, but Martinez's intervention transformed it into something larger, a demonstration of how military tradition continues, how sacrifice is remembered, and how respect flows between generations of warriors who understand what service truly means. This story was brought to you by Echoes of Honor. Before we leave you today, here's our question. Have you ever known someone who never asked for recognition but deserved more than anyone else? Tell us in the comments what they meant to you and how you remember them. And if you think stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support the channel. We'll see you in the next one.